Purple Daily is daily Vikings entertainment. We just want the Vikings to win a Super Bowl before we die.
I will ride with this group.
Seriously, man. Please.
And away we go.
Happy Thorsday, everybody. Thor Nystrom from Matthew Berry's FantasyLife.com. He even has a 3.0 mock draft out that we will dive into later in the show. He's going to the Senior Bowl next week, so this is going to be the first of many different deep dives into what the Vikings should be doing in the draft. Draft season is upon us here, so we'll put a quarter in Thor and let him make us smarter. I'm going to put a quarter in Prize Picks here, maybe even more than a quarter. Prize Picks, where you can win up to 1,000 times your money. You select between 2 and 6 players. You pick more or less on their projected stats, and you have a good old time watching NFL football this weekend. So they'll give you free squares once in a while, like this one. Jaden Daniels here. I'll throw up on the screen there. 0.5 passing yards. I like the Eagles' defense, but I think old Jaden's going to complete a pass. So we'll go more on that, and then you select between 1 and 5 other players. And it's great. Prize Picks app. Download it. It's free to download. Use the code PURPLEDAILY and get $50 instantly when you play just $5. That's the Prize Picks app, code PURPLEDAILY, and $50 instantly when you play just $5. And one more shout out before we dive in here. Roku is America's #1 TV streaming platform. I have been a Roku guy myself for over a decade. The old external Roku that you plug into your TV. Well, now they just offer a new line of smart TVs made by Roku. It's great for sports viewing. There's even a sports tab on the Roku home screen where you can browse live and upcoming games, and it'll take you automatically to the streaming platform that you need to be on. So great for football watching season. We have a brand new 65-inch Pro Series 4K TV in our living room. Go get one if you haven't. Maybe get one in time for the biggest football games coming up the next 3 weeks. Roku.com to learn more or shop at a retailer nearest you.
Football.
What's up, Thor?
How you guys doing? Good to be here.
Living the dream, man.
Yeah,
this
we're
is the
here
start.
now, boys. We're here. The season just began.
Thor continues his daily crusade, posting J.J. McCarthy propaganda on the internet, which we love. So you're going to the Senior Bowl next week, and this is like you got Senior Bowl, you got Combine coming up, and it's the start of the draft prep season, but it's also the breeding ground for tampering discussions. Like this is where the Vikings will find out if there's a market for Sam Darnold. And so we'd love to get your thoughts as you go into the Senior Bowl on the 24th pick and anything else important to the Vikings. So we'll throw it to you, man. What are you looking forward to heading to the Senior Bowl next week?
Yeah, I can't wait to get there. It's crazy to think that a week from now I will be on the practice field for the last day of practices at the Senior Bowl. We are going to learn a whole lot about the 2025 NFL Draft over the next week in time. So, yeah, I mean, for folks out there, ESPN, I think, is the one that carries it. The practices are the more important thing than the game, but I'm there for all of it. I can't wait. The one-on-ones down there are fascinating to watch. And I think that this is the most stacked pre-draft all-star event circuit that we have had during my time doing the NFL draft over the past decade. A couple different factors have led to that. The biggest one that opened the floodgates was, for instance, the Senior Bowl is no longer technically the Senior Bowl, what it was named after. You used to only be able to take guys who had graduated and were 4-year plus players. You can now take everybody. So they can go and get the underclassmen who have declared early, and it has made these events a lot more stacked. We're going to see first rounders in Mobile, second rounders, and all the way through. I think last year was 43% of the entire NFL draft came from the Senior Bowl. You're going to see a similar percentage this year.
So Thor, how much is this going to change your next mock as far as things that can change it? You know, the Combine, is this because it's the first, real long look at these prospects? Is this the biggest decider in how your mock can move and change and morph into different things?
It's a legitimate data point, yes. I always say that the most important data point is your film from your last season of college, but then the two major pre-draft events that you were in, that's a percentage of your eval as well, right? The NFL Combine being the big one as far as your testing, and then be it the Senior Bowl, be it the Shrine Game, whatever postseason all-star event that you get invited to, showing on the field against analogous NFL prospects, how you perform in those one-on-one drills, the team scrimmages, etc. Also a very important thing.
Let me turn the on button here. Professional media member.
I can't throw
Phil
stones
Mackey
on that
here.
one.
No.
Unfortunately, I can't throw stones.
Declan does it the least amount. Declan never does it. He
does it.
never forgets to turn his mic on.
Very rare.
I'm good for maybe once a month. So now that the Vikings, we know they have the 24th pick.
Yeah.
Just generally, are you going into this thing thinking, boy, there's some cornerbacks, defensive tackles, running backs, like you should just pick the best one at 24? Or because they only have 4 picks, should they be planning on trading back? Should they literally be like crafting a plan to trade back and see if they can pick up an extra day 2, maybe day 3 picks?
Your free agency strategy needs to go in conjunction with your draft strategy here, in my opinion, this being the most important offseason of the Quincy regime. And the reason that I say that is if you have the strategy that I would have, where you're going to funnel the vast majority of your cap space into 3 studs, 3 guys who would be qualifying free agents, and then not sign another qualifying free agent, there's more than 3 qualifying free agents that are going to walk out the door. That is the equation you need to generate comp picks in 2026 to get your 3rd round pick for Sam Darnold, for instance. Because of that, you need more picks than 4 picks because you need to flesh out the rest of your roster. So that's the way I would approach free agency, which would then lead to the draft. If I can't get a tag and trade pick for Sam Darnold and I'm going into the draft with 4 picks, you really don't have an option but to trade down. That's the bad news, is that, baby's sort of stuck in a corner with that. The good news is, though, the position groups that the Vikings need, early 2nd round is perfect. Right? I mean, IDL is utterly stacked. Daniel Jeremiah put out a tweet yesterday. This class is stacked with defensive tackles. Yes, it is. Then the cornerbacks, you're going to have guys at the top of the 2nd and maybe even a guy that could have gone in the top 15. It's just he's coming off a season-ending injury. There's a shot that Ravel gets out of the 1st round because he's coming off the ACL injury. There's a shot that Benjamin Morrison from Notre Dame falls out of the 1st round because of his hip injury. And then the other position, either you want to talk about right guard, the first right guard off the board might go early 2nd round. We might not see a pure guard taken in round 1. In fact, the Vegas odds might be slightly put that way if it was to come out right now. And then running back, if you're at the top of the 2nd round, you are in position to grab RB2. So for me, it would be a trade down if you can't acquire extra picks in advance. I put a thing out on Twitter yesterday just to give people sort of a totem in their mind for what a trade down could look like. This jives on the trade charts. If you were to trade from 24, and I just use 37 as an example with the Raiders, scenario you could think in your head is, what if Jalen Milroe falls down the board, and what if the Raiders weren't able to draft or to sign Sam Darnold, so they don't have their quarterback? Maybe they would try to trade up to the late 1st round. So they come up from 37. For 24, you could get 37, 68 early in the 3rd, 178, and then a 2026 round 6 would more or less jive for the 24th pick. You'd be high up there in the 2nd round. You would have a high 3rd round pick. You're following that up with your 3rd round comp pick after that. And then you would end up having the multiple 5th still, of course. And then you would add this 138 pick to that, or the 178 pick to that. I'm sorry.
So, Thor, where do we think, let's just play this entire thing out from the Vikings' internal strategy. Where do we think they're most likely to bank on and hotly pursue free agent targets positionally? Because personally, I think guard.
Yeah.
Like I think guard, because if I'm drafting, I don't know that I really want to draft a guard high, but I certainly would sign an established veteran one. So when they sit down to discuss their strategy here, where do you think they're probably going to bank the heaviest on? Okay, we can fill these areas of need in free agency. Therefore, to your point, setting up the draft philosophy.
Yes, Judd, and I agree with you. I think guard is going to be right dang near the top there because of 2 factors. Number one, the guard class in free agency is absolutely stacked. The guy that I'm enamored with, as you guys know, is Trey Smith, but there's multiple other ones there as well. it is arguably the most stacked free agent group there. So if someone gets ridiculous for Trey Smith, you could easily defer off to the second or the third option there, and it's going to be a plus starter. If you save that position for the draft, you're going to need to roll the dice on a tackle to guard convert. The kid from Arizona with the last name that I can't pronounce yet, the Missouri kid, Mbao, is another one. There's 3 or 4 of them that potentially could go at the end of the first round. Or a guy like Tyler Booker, who it looks like a colossus, but he hasn't quite played up to his talent level yet. He is a former high school teammate of J.J. McCarthy, though. But I wouldn't take any of those guys with that 24th pick. I would rather, whether it's 24, whether it's early second round via trade down, interior defensive line is the primary position that I am targeting there because this draft is so stacked at the top with that. I'm pretty confident that defensive lineman that should have gone in the first round is going to be available at the top of the second, again, because there's so many. And then I also think you have the interesting factor at play with the cornerbacks, where you have a couple of these cornerbacks that would have been top half of the first round players had they been healthy their entire last season, but they weren't. They're coming off season-ending injuries, and that could cause a push down. So those are the IDL and cornerback for me, with the special exception of being the running back. And Judd, to your point, the one I want to cross off and not have to worry about at the top of the draft is offensive guard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just on PFF's top 100 free agents list that they've fleshed this out now. And it's great. Football Junkies, the PFF top 100 free agent rankings. You can search any position. So you could say, I just want to see centers, guards, and defensive tackles and running backs or whatever. And then you can even put it into like the summaries of the players. There's a slim and there's a thick. So you can see like the full, it's amazing. If you're looking to just snort football, go to this. But they have in the top 30, they have 5 guards and then a center, Drew Dahlman from the Falcons. They don't have a defensive tackle until the 30th, in the top 100 until 30. And it's, I'm going to butcher the pronunciation, but it's Dallas's Osa.
Ozarike?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll go with that. And then you got like Milton Williams from the Eagles. And actually, Onwuzurike is Detroit. He's ranked 40th.
Oh,
but,
yeah, right.
And then, but my point is, there's a lot more guards in free agency than there are defensive tackles, and I wonder if that is the case that you just said. You know what? Go spend 15 or 20 on a guard, and then lean on the defensive tackle rich draft to get young dudes in and plug them in for next season.
Yeah, the circumstances just are where they are. What did the golfers say? You play the ball where it lies. Yeah. So I mean, and where does it lie here? Quincy has the resource on both end of it, the cap space and the draft equity. What would you do if you were him? The guards, you have the sure things there. It's been a problem area for years. I think that's where you would you would start the line as far as the free agent spending. Yeah. And then a position like you're mentioning, interior defensive line. Maybe you can get one of those top 3 interior defensive linemen. If you fall off too beneath that, what kind of an upgrade are you actually getting? And in the draft class, that is the stacked position. So of course you want to, you're going to sort of defer that one, or at least one of them, because they probably have 2 holes there that they want to fill for the draft.
At cornerback, Thor, how much does the fact that some of the potential top prospects are coming off season-ending injuries scare you and teams? And like what type of injury scares you, and what type does the market sort of just say, yeah, that's too bad, but it doesn't impact our impression of this kid?
Between those 2 cornerbacks we were just talking, the ACL worries you way less just because of modern medicine and how good we've gotten with that. So I wouldn't be too concerned about Ravel. Morrison is one where you're going to have your whole medical team in, and we're not only going to have to talk through your prognosis, you are going to have to give me a PowerPoint presentation on the last 20 cornerbacks to come into the NFL with the most similar hip injuries to Benjamin Morrison. And then I want to see graphs of how their careers played out, how long they played, how many snaps per season they could handle. Morrison is the one where you got to dive really deep into that thing, and you have to trust your medical staff. Hip injuries, as you guys know, it's the one thing that can end your career or cut it really short. Bo Jackson being a famous, sad example of this. That's the one where you got to dive really deep into it.
Yeah, Judd raised an alarm. Mel Kiper had the Notre Dame cornerback going to the Vikings, I believe, yesterday. And, Judd sounded the alarm on that one.
Hips scare me a lot.
Tough one.
You got to flip your hips a corner. You can't flip your hips if one's going to fall off.
You must. Yeah.
Hey, where'd my hip go?
Yeah, it's a tough one. Yeah, I mean, and who knows? You know, we didn't say at the Holiday Inn Express last night, so that's one that we're gonna have to have the docs come in. We're gonna have to have the whole medical staff, and we need some presentations.
Good point. Yeah. Good point.
Hey, before we get to a lot more here, Dex, why don't you tell the audience it's cold today? If you want to pretend like it's summer, the Minneapolis Boat Show at the Convention Center is coming up. Also, Old Macadac. Big business meetings here this morning at Score North.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm going to send you guys off on the rest of your Thursday journey.
Wait, we're sending you off.
Big.
You're not sending us off. We're sending you off.
You're going to send me
You're
off.
You're leaving us.
Your hips are rotating out of here.
I'm sorry.
That's what
I'm going to go
this way. Dad is leaving. What are we going to do?
Out.
Let's have a party.
So let's go to the Convention Center. We'll see you guys. Love you, Thor.
Peace out, Phil. Hey, by the way, Minneapolis Boat Show coming up. It actually just started today. Through Sunday here in Minneapolis. It's not just the boat show. It's the Midwest's largest boat show. More boats, more brands, unbelievable deals. MinneapolisBoatShow.com to learn more and purchase tickets. Children ages 12 and under are free with an accompanying adult. Again, MinneapolisBoatShow.com to get your tickets today.
Boat Show is great because it reminds you of what is to come, but it is still frigid outside. It's frigid outside, which allows Sports Dan to tell you about commitment, because that's one of the most important words at MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air. For over a century now, families have relied on MSP for all their plumbing, drains, heating, and cooling needs. In other words, if that furnace is starting to balk a little bit, coughing a little bit, you don't want that. You want to make sure that MSP fixes that. As a 100% family-owned and operated business, MSP committed to taking care of your family. Right now, get $50 off any HVAC or plumbing repair. Give them a call, 651-615-4292, or check out their website, callmsp.com. Call MSP.com. Make sure your house is safe and nice and toasty. MSP Plumbing, Heating, and Air will do that for you. Thor, let's go back to Darnold for a second. I got a question about your opinion of how this is going to play out, because we're going to talk about this franchise tag possibility, and all of this intrigues me. I don't know if it's going to happen, but let's go through I believe the correct word is the machinations here. Okay.
Yeah.
So you can franchise tag a player from February 18th to March 4th. The Vikings are going to inevitably at the Senior Bowl with you next week start to talk to teams about, are you interested? Right. Cause you have to know, when do you think that they would put the tag on him? And when do you think, if that's the case, that they would know for certain that there is enough interest to justify it? Because the move could backfire too. So take me through what your opinion of how this sort of will work into February and then March.
The latter has to come before the former. You need to know that you have a trade in place before you can officially put the tag on him. So you're not burning all your available, or the majority of it, your cap space this off season. So yeah, that is something that they're going to gauge in Mobile, and then the weeks after that, and then that deadline goes through the NFL Combine. So if we're down to the wire there, maybe you'd still be engaging people there as well. I still have my doubts that after the last two games, there will be enough of a market of teams that will go 40 plus on a multi-year deal to offer a pick via a tag and trade. But certainly, if you're Quincy, you have to explore that. No doubt about it.
Thor, I guess percentage chance right now that you think the Titans actually wind up maybe moving back from number one overall. I know their GM said yesterday, and I think his introductory press conference, their new one from the Chiefs, that, hey, we want a generational talent. So I think it's probably likely they'll go QB there. But I guess percent chance, and does it make sense maybe for the Titans to trade down, get a lot more picks, and maybe load up for next year's quarterback draft or free agency or trade? Because I think the Titans, who have cap space to obviously absorb a Darnold hit this year and next, the season afterwards, what is the likelihood that the Titans do maybe enter the chat for the Sam Darnold sweepstakes?
I like where your head is at with this. I've said previously, talking about these mock drafts and stuff, that the Titans' decision was binary. It was going to be either Cam Ward or Shadir Sanders. I found it fascinating what that new GM said at that presser, the thing that you're alluding to, where he said, we are not going to pass on a generational talent. Cam Ward and Shadir Sanders are not generational talents. There is only one generational talent in this class, and his name is Travis Hunter. So when that guy said that, I immediately thought, are they planning to go after Sam Darnold in free agency and select Travis Hunter number one? Or trade, for instance, the Giants, a team that is just absolutely desperate. You have the desperate GM who already should have been fired. His kids are smarter than him. Did you see that video?
The 13-year-old kid is smart. He told him what to do.
Yeah. The Sons were telling him to draft Jaden Daniels or JJ McCarthy, and he didn't
Joe
do
Shane.
either of them. Joe Shade, yeah. And then Brian Dable, both on the hot seat. Maybe they would trade up to number one. I'm sure they'd be incentivized to do that. And then the Titans at 3, you could either go Hunter or the quarterback. I mean, whoever falls down to you. But I found that fascinating. They also said that they'll take the phone calls, to your point. But yeah, Declan, I think Tennessee getting involved with Sam Darnold, the odds of that appear to be much better than they were 2 days ago because of those comments.
Are we buying him though? Like that's my thing is it's his first press conference. He's clearly going to now through the end of April lie as much as possible. So like, are we buying that, or is he, not surprisingly, smart move, trying to drive up the price of that pick? Like I couldn't decide, and because he's a new GM, there aren't a lot of tells yet. Like Spielman had tells, like you could tell a blatant lie as opposed to a little white lie with Rick. I couldn't decide if I was buying what he was selling, which by the way makes sense as a quote, or if he's trying to drive the price up to, as Deck said, also trade down and get more.
I found it noteworthy, and I do think it's a little bit of a tell. I mean, it's a kind of a comment where on the other end of it, people could rake you over the coals if you end up taking, let's say, Cam Ward, and then Cam Ward is a disappointment. They will throw that comment back in your face when you're getting fired 3 years later. Again, if you're making that argument of generational talent, generally there's one in a class, because Mike Renner made a great point on this, where a generation in the NFL is between 8 to 10 to 11 years, and you have about 11 position groups that you go through in the NFL draft. So typically you have one guy, right, that you could consider a generational per class, right, at a position. Travis Hunter is the guy this time around. To me, that is telling. I think that he is alluding to Travis Hunter. I don't know another way that you could read that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Maybe this is a good segue into your mock that you posted at Fantasy Life, Thor. But also, so I saw in your write-up that the Titans' offensive assistant Peyton McCollum is the QB coach for the West team. That's who Shadur will be playing for. So they'll have at least the early intel, right? So, I mean, there's obviously a possibility where he comes back to the Titans, says, no, this guy's it. We had the number one pick. He's our stud. But this, back kind of to the Senior Bowl stuff we talked about at the beginning, this type of stuff is the first groundwork that goes from Senior Bowl, free agency, draft, for all that strategy. So the Titans kind of get the first crack to say, hey, is Shadur our guy at number one?
Yeah, that's right. And there's more than Peyton McCollum down there from the Tennessee organization, but he's the one who's going to be up close and personal and getting to run Shadir through all those drills. And it's not just Shadir that's down there in the Dallas area. We got Coach Prime down there. And I don't think this isn't breaking news, but I had a buddy who was at last night's Timberwolves Mavericks game. He did a close-up of courtside. Travis Hunter was sitting courtside. Travis Hunter is also down there at the Shrine game. He attended attended the game last night. Yep. So Mr. McCollum and some of those Tennessee Titans employees, I'm sure that they will also get a crack to speak to Mr. Hunter. They will get exposure to both those guys and some of that Colorado coaching staff and ask them whatever they want. They will have a whole lot more intel after this week on those two guys specifically.
In fact, there was something posted post-game by the Wolves. Travis left with Ant's shoes and jersey. So he went back and met him and got a bunch of stuff from him. All right. this draft is very intriguing in the sense that the quarterbacks, there's two, but it's not nearly as clear. Like the 2024 draft, clearly had guys. Are we anywhere near the point now? Because to what you said about the Titans, if you draft the wrong QB because you have to have one, you're probably gone in 3 years, 4 years tops. Thor, are we getting near the point of in a draft like this that teams do start to back off? Like it feels like the top teams draft quarterbacks because that's become the standard, the norm. And then when you're talking about, Travis Hunter, if this was the, I don't know, take your pick. If this was the 1993 draft, okay, he would be, I think, atop everyone's big board back then because he is, to your point, a generational talent. Are we going to see somebody break the mold and say, you know what, Cam Ward might be good. We're not quite sure. Shadur Sanders might be good. We're not quite sure. But they might not be in the top 3. Are we ever going to see a day here where teams start to back off of that? And yes, they go first round. Yes, they go top 10. But we're not basically saying Travis Hunter probably won't go 1, not because he's not talented enough, but because he just simply doesn't play the quarterback position.
Well, I thought there was something interesting that happened last year in the NFL draft that could be indicative of this. There was a lot of talk about how, was it 6 quarterbacks in the top 12?
12. Bo Nix was the 6th.
And then you had Spencer Rattler in the 5th, right? You had this enormous long wait until the next one. And so to answer your question, I think the guys where the NFL or an organization decides this guy can step in day 1, those guys are still going to go at the top of the board. But I think where there's been a change is, you guys recall in the past, we would have a lot of the day 2 quarterbacks, and it would be like the guys who had the physical ability, but they just hadn't quite gotten there yet. So it's like, oh, we'll roll the dice on Charlie Batch or,
whoever.
But Brock Osweiler, whatever.
Charlie Batch, what a throwback.
I got his Eastern Michigan starting lineup right up there. Shout out,
crazy.
Mac.
I love you though. You're crazy.
Shout out Maction. But now it's, I feel like you get the big investment, but then outside, if they can't step in week 1, let's hit other positions and save that for later on. So I think that's one of the differences, and you could see that in this class. I still think that Shadur and Cam Ward go in the top 3. I think that Jalen Milroe gets overdrafted, but we'll find out on that. But I think where the punitive starts from the NFL. I think the NFL is going to be punitive with Quinn Ewers for the step back that he took this year. That's a guy who traditionally I think would have gone maybe late first or in day 2. I think he's going in day 3. Quinn Ewers should have gone back to college, in my opinion. He should have transferred.
I saw you tweet about that.
Yeah. And I've heard some whispers that maybe the NIL offers that he was offered were not as good as what was reported out there. There was a $6 million offer. I got a scoff at that. I don't know. I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn Express with regards to those rumors last night either, but he should have gone back to school either way. But I think that's where you're going to see a gulf. You're going to see the guys at the top, and then there's going to be a gulf.
Okay.
Oh, Thor, do you want to get into your mock draft here from Fantasy Life?
Sure, let's do it.
All right. So we kind of touched on some of the stuff we saw in that first round with the Titans at number 1 overall. So Shadur Sanders, you have going to the Titans right now. Until you have more information, he's obviously still your QB.
Might have to put out a new one after that Borgazzi came out and did his comments.
And then, Judd, you'll like this at pick 2. We have a trade. Judd only appreciates mock drafts that do the trades.
Oh, yeah.
Thor has a trade at pick number 2. You have the Giants going up, and then they get Cam Ward.
Yeah, the Giants are just so desperate. And, I saw it was like a New York Post or, one of those things or whatever was like, oh, all in on Sam Darnold in free agency because they're like, oh, the Giants are going to get boxed out of the top 2 quarterbacks. I still think you have the possibility for that. The Titans will listen to calls. The Browns certainly will listen to calls. And there's also a shot that the Titans take Travis Hunter and just push that second quarterback down to you. So, yeah, I mean, we'll see how it goes. But the Giants, they got to do something.
If Sam Darnold goes back to or signs with the Giants, I'm sorry, he's crazy.
Yeah.
It's dysfunctional. It's New York, where, by the way, you would play in the same stadium that you played in with the Jets. And don't tell me that would not have the recipe for a disaster. It's tabloids. Like Darnold, a part of his thing here, right, was he found, you're in Minnesota. you're paid attention to, but you're not paid attention to a lot. If he puts himself in the pressure cooker of playing for Joe Shane and Brian Dable in what very well could be their last year, he's dumber than I thought. Like, that's the one place, I'm sorry, you should not touch that. You should not touch that city, those teams with a 10-foot pole.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. And you sign a long-term deal there. You are almost assuredly going to be playing for a new GM and a new coach the next year, barring a miracle. So I agree with you, but, money talks. And, Judd, I know that you just signed with the Dodgers. I saw that on Twitter, so I know you know what I'm talking about.
But I mean, I'm not going to collapse. See, that's the thing, is Sam will collapse.
That's true. That is true.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
Deferred money.
Yeah.
You had the Browns obviously moving back from 2 to 3, so they get Travis Hunter. They get the generational talent here. You also believe, you have this right up here on Fantasy Life, that the relationship with Kirk Cousins and Kevin Stefanski could be intriguing here. Obviously, if Kirk gets released from Atlanta, he gets all that offset language. I guess Kirk Cousins in Cleveland, that could be one of the bridge quarterback options there as they figure out life post Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, that's my situational assumption is that the Browns are going to end up with one of the Vikings' former quarterbacks. And this all has to do with the Deshaun Watson, the ridiculousness with that. Everyone just wants Deshaun Watson out of their lives, most prominently Andrew Berry and the Cleveland
the Browns.
Yeah, and if they can't get rid of that salary, if they can't get any relief from that, I think it's Kirk Cousins on the minimum Russell Wilson deal after he gets cut post June 1st because he won't accept the trade from the Falcons. But there is another scenario here where because of the re-injury to the Achilles, I'm going to use air quotes here because he re-injured something that was injured on the football field, but it appears that the Browns are going to make the argument that it was an NFI, a non-football injury, which if that is the case, it opens the door potentially to void that contract and get out of the entire thing. That one is sticky, though, because, again, you got to make the argument that this re-aggravation is something that wouldn't have happened if he had not been on the football field. You have to tie that all into non-football. I just think that's a hairy argument. Where you can get it, though, is if he gets medically ruled out for this coming season, the insured portion of the money that is going to him next year, you will be given that relief, not this offseason, unfortunately for them, but you will be given it back next offseason. It's something like $43 million. Why does this matter? Because if you know that you're starting $43 million ahead of the rest of the NFL in salary cap space next year, theoretically, you can do essentially the exact same contract structure that they did for Deshaun Watson initially, where it is the year one, very, very small cap hit for Sam Darnold, and then you backload the entire deal. I think if they know that they can get that, they can get the salary cap relief in 2026, I think you're going to see them pursue Sam Darnold on a backloaded contract.
That whole potential legal proceeding is going to be so delicious.
Put it on court TV.
Because you know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
The Browns are going to introduce that game day photo from late in the season of Deshaun dancing with his girlfriend.
Yep.
And they're going to say this Yahoo, who was supposed to be like if you look at guys who rupture their Achilles, they're like Kirk was. They're on a couch for X amount of weeks, and they're doing nothing that's dangerous. This is going to be great. I think the Browns might win. I think the Browns might win this.
I like
It'll be a tough
yeah.
one, but I think that there's a chance.
Yeah, I'm not the person who's going to generate sympathy for Deshaun Watson here, and Deshaun Watson, not exactly a guy known for his judgment.
Nope.
No, not at all. Flying through some of the picks here in the top 10. So the Patriots take offensive tackle Kelvin Banks Jr. The Jags take a cornerback in Will Johnson. The Raiders take a wide receiver. Let's keep scrolling down here. You do have Jalen Milrose going to the Saints at pick 9. So they finally, Spencer Rattler, obviously probably not their guy long term. Thor, Jalen Milrose from Bama, maybe their next QB1.
Yeah, it's a team that has by far the worst cap situation in the NFL. They're negative $52 million or something like that in salary cap space, $20 million south of the next lowest team. And then you have no talent on your roster. You have holes everywhere. So it's another, like, what is the perfect organization for Jalen Milroe? I think it's the organization that is no hope for the next 2 years because you get a free swing on his upside. And if he hits, then you get yourself out of hell. And if he doesn't, well, you're in the same situation you were before. Like, you're going to be picking at the top of the draft in the next couple of years. And my suggestion for the Saints is if you whiff on Jalen Milroe and you're picking first there, we have heard that Arch Manning, there's a good shot that he will spend 2 more years in college, doesn't need the money. If Arch Manning came out 2 off seasons from now, Saints picking number 1, let's say they took a swing on Milroe and whiffed, now you can bring Arch home. So, I mean, like, there's going to be quarterbacks in the future, but they at least are in a position where you can swing for that. And what really are you losing if you whiff?
True.
You're not going to contend anyway.
Ashton Genty going to the Cowboys, pick 12. So he goes, I mean, man, we had Bijan go in number 2 overall a few years ago, right?
No, you're
Bijan
thinking
was...
Saquon. Bijan was 8 to the Falcons 2 years
okay.
ago. Yeah. And one note on this, the Ashton Genty free spot to the Cowboys, that has become ubiquitous. I actually thought about switching him to the Bears in this one because we published this the night that Ben Johnson had gotten hired by the Bears. You guys recall that Ben Johnson's former employer, they shocked the NFL world by taking Jahmyr Gibbs, number 12 overall, a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. Ashton Genty is a better prospect than Jahmyr Gibbs. They're not the same kind of player, but I would take Genty above Jahmyr Gibbs. They got DeAndre Swift and they got Roshan Johnson back there, but Ashton Genty, that might be a guy that Ben Johnson is banging the table for in the war room.
So, Thor, you I think talked about this last week. You said Ben Johnson to the Bears is a potential disaster.
Yeah.
That Caleb does not play a style suited for how Ben coaches. Now that the trigger has been pulled, that Ben Johnson, who loves the city of Chicago, he's a big Cubs fan, he is now in charge there. What is your opinion of how this is going to work now that it's official? You still think it's a complete train wreck waiting to happen?
I don't think it's going to. I think one of them is going to wreck the other one, or else they both wreck each other. And Ben Johnson, he has said the right things of like, oh, it's not going to be the golf playbook. We're going to tailor it around Caleb. The problem is Caleb doesn't give an F about what your playbook is. A playbook is designed for a play concept to be run within 2 to 4 seconds after the snap. But Caleb Williams don't make a decision then. That is just his time for pat the ball, and now he's scrambling around, and then we're going to break off our routes and play playground ball. I think that Ben Johnson is going to have no hair by the end of next season because he is going to rip it out strand by strand. The coaches that have tried to get Caleb Williams to play within structure have all failed. And so then they just let Caleb do whatever he wants. I really respect Ben Johnson, but he is the guy, again, he is the writer in Hollywood that wants the actors reading the lines exactly as they are written. Caleb Williams doesn't read the script.
It's like Herb.
Exactly. Yes. The whole thing is ad lib. That's exactly. He's Larry David. That's right.
Interesting.
That's awesome. So scrolling down here, you have the Vikings at pick 24, and you have them taking cornerback. Is it Jahade Barron?
Jahade Barron.
Jahade Barron.
Yeah.
Okay. So cornerback out of Texas. I will say there is some run on corners above the Vikings. You have the Steelers taking a corner at pick 21, the Bucks taking a corner, Benjamin Morrison at pick 19. I believe on the ESPN mock we did from Kuiper yesterday, the corners kind of went after the Vikings made their selection at 24, which to me would scream a trade back option. But at this point, Thor, if the top cornerbacks are coming off, Vikings probably take the best cornerback available here and don't trade back.
Yeah, if you're stuck here, you monitor that situation. And between those 2 injured corners that we're talking about, what did your medical staff say on them? And are they there? And then is Barron there? You start to have a bigger drop off there. The cornerback position, it is not as deep there at the top as the IDL position. So that's something to monitor vis-a-vis all this. One other option, I had Walter Nolan, the 5-star interior defensive lineman from Ole Miss, going 1 pick after the Vikings. He would certainly be in play here too. Obviously, what happens in free agency in advance of this is going to inform some of this. But Jahade Barron was the last, for sure, round 1 corner that was left there on the board. So I ended up sticking with that. But yeah, it sort of underscores the options that you will have. A guy like Walter Nolan, who, by the way, will be in Mobile there at the Senior Bowl. We will have boots on the ground checking out Walter Nolan, along with my boy, Deion Walker. Deion Walker, a guy where if you trade into the first half of that second round, that could be a target for you up there. he will be in Mobile as well. And that's one where, it's like Sam Neill getting out of the Jeep in Jurassic Park where he takes his glasses off really slowly. When I see Deion Walker for the first time in person, I'm going to be Sam Neill.
You're going to say, Mr. Walker, I've loved you for a long time. Nobody else likes you like I do. So Thor, if on opening day 2025, your cornerbacks are Murphy, just assuming he's back.
Yep.
Mekhi Blackman, who's going to be coming back from the torn ACL. He suffered on the first day of training camp. And this kid. How good do you feel about those three corners playing or starting for you?
I don't. I need the name DJ Reed in there. And then Blackman and Mr. Barron, for instance, they can compete for the other one.
Okay.
But that would give us both depth and injury insurance on Blackman coming back from the injury. But I wouldn't want to count on both those guys with sort of nebulous depth behind them.
So you're saying to me that you would that in the start of free agency within the first few days you would address guard and corner quickly.
I want a good corner, yeah.
But I mean there's only X amount to go around. The other intriguing thing that I didn't think about is if you actually are going to manipulate your especially first wave free agent class to preserve the potential Darnold 2026 comp pick if he's not franchised. That's going to hamstring you a little bit because you're probably not going to sign an extra one if you can to preserve that pick if that is the priority, and let's assume it's a third round pick in 2026.
Yeah, so the Vikings have the most qualifying free agents that are going to be free agents, or I'm saying that wrong, but they have the most guys like that in the NFL. Now, it's guys like Darnold, and then Murphy might come back, Bynum might come back, et cetera, et cetera. Right. But this is why, and I've said this from the very start, as you guys know, I would funnel my salary cap space. You have the re-signings, of course. This is beyond that. I would funnel it into three outside mega stud free agents coming back because those are three qualifying guys. The math on this is more than three qualifying Vikings leaving free agency. That is your route to comp picks. And I want to start playing the comp game. Right. And I believe that Quincy is going to start playing the comp game. If you go out and you get three studs, and my what I've said for this is Trey Smith, Milton Williams, Phil brought up the other two guys that you could potentially go there, interior defensive line, and then DJ Reed. You will have the money to do that. You cross those off. Then in the draft, you're looking at, you're down to three. It's one more IDL, one more cornerback, and then theoretically a running back, right? A day two running back, depending on what happens with Aaron Jones, excuse me.
Oh, you're getting greedy.
Well,
you're getting really greedy, right? I love it, but you're getting greedy.
Hey, Joe, we can have it all here because we trade down as well. You get that early second round pick. You get an early third round pick, which again, that's jived by the trade charts here. And then you have the late third. You're going to be able to get a starting running back on day two, even in the third round here. And maybe we should just, since we're pre-Senior Bowl right here, I want to go through a couple of these running backs that are going to be in Mobile for people to keep an eye on. This running back class is utterly stupid, how deep this thing goes. I mean, we're going to be in round 7 and have intriguing running backs going. So that's why you can potentially hold off until round 3. I'm just curious to see how this manifests during the draft. Could this pull Ashton Genty down beneath a 10 or a 12 because teams know that this position group is so stacked? Could this pull Caleb Johnson and Omari and Hampton a little bit down from the top of the second where I believe they're going to go? Maybe they drop to the middle of the second, and that drops the next tier of guys a half a round down, et cetera. But at the Senior Bowl, guys to watch out for there. Both the Michigan running backs are going to be there. You have a big hammer back in Damian Martinez. Cam Scatabo, everybody's favorite tackle breaker from Arizona State, who can go out there and catch the ball. He's going to be there. He's going to be fist fighting people off him. Jarquez Hunter from Auburn is a multi-talented little bowling ball back type of a guy. And then one name for Vikings fans that, I'm gonna toss two names at you guys. Outside of the names that I just said that I'm going to be keeping a particularly close eye on. One of my favorite sleeper backs in this class, and I'm going to say this while I can because this guy is already starting to generate some smoke. He might not be a sleeper for long, but I got a lot of exposure on this guy because he was a starting running back for the Kansas Fighting Jayhawks the last 3 years. I I got to watch all his games live. Both of my schools had awesome running backs this year. Of course, KJ2 with Iowa, and then Devin Neal. Devin Neal is probably going to go in round 3, and I think he's going to start in the NFL for a long time. Tremendous feet. This guy has the best feet you will ever see. They're just so fast and choppy, and they follow his eye work. So he has very good vision, and the second he sees it, you'll see the really hard direction changes. It's hard to square him up because his feet are so good, and the vision, he'll change your angle on the tackle attempt right before you leave your feet. And he's also a really good receiver who carries the running in space thing. He carries that with him as a receiver. The highest end comps he's gotten. I'm not going to go this far. You guys know I'm a homer, but I'm not going to go this far. But I'm going to say other people's bonanza comp for Neal is Elvin Kamara. I think that, like I said, I think that's too far. But it's another guy who is not a big back, but he had the awesome feet, multi-faceted player, and isn't going to test as like the best athlete of all time. But he's just so skilled, and he has such good feet, et cetera, et cetera. The other guy that I wanted to mention, whose game just keeps growing on me the more that I watch him, but he's a really fascinating eval, is a kid named RJ Harvey from UCF. RJ Harvey, coming out of high school, ran a 4.4, and he was a dual threat quarterback in high school who demanded that he play quarterback in college. And so he signed with Virginia, and then he couldn't get on the field as a 5'9" true freshman quarterback. So he transferred to UCF and found his destiny as a running back. The kid's 5'9", but he's better built than you would think. He's like 212, 213 pounds. I think he could get up to 215 or a little bit above. So he sort of fits that bowling ball type build, except he's a sprinter. He almost assuredly is going to run in the high 4.3s. And where it gets really interesting with him is he is a home run hitter, one of the more prolific ones that we saw come out of college football the last 3 years. This is where it gets interesting with his evaluation, though. UCF with Gus Malzahn, they would run, they spread the field, and then they run tempo. And so they would get the defenses tired. And what you would see with Harvey, he has good vision, and he denotes danger really quickly. Like, he has a good processor. But in college, the way that this would manifest is he'd see the guy starting to come through the line, and he'd be like, why am I going to deal with the garbage in up here between the tackles where the run was designed, when I know I can steal the edge here and then outrun their outside linebacker? So you would see that all the time. And then he'd get skinny down the line, jut around the left tackle. And now he'd be outrunning someone down the field. And he accrued all these 20-plus yard, 30-plus yard explosive runs. That game in the NFL, he's not going to be able to do that nearly as often as he did in college. The whole, I don't want to do that, I'm bouncing around and now I'm going to outrun you. Those guys with that profile that accrued a ton of their yards through that are scary heading into the NFL. But the thing I'll say, again, he has that bowling ballish build for a speedster. And he also breaks tackles because he has really good lateral agility. And like I said, he has good vision and instincts too. So he just needs to not change his approach. He needs to modulate his strategy for the level he's at. If he can do that, he is going to be a top, like on his depth chart in the NFL, he will be top 2 and maybe even the top 1. At worst, he'd be a complimentary guy. He's a really good receiver as well that brings that explosive element there. He can't pass block worth a lick, but you get sort of these two elements. A guy to keep an eye on for Vikings fans for sure.
Man,
football.
Exactly. So, yeah, we
Phil's
gone.
So.
Phil, so we'll go acapella.
I'll be
there.
the soundbar.
And Thor will have boots on the ground in Mobile, Alabama. He's leaving next week, and we will arrange our Thorsday recording because Thor will be literally at practice games, Senior Bowl stuff when we record this time next week. So a Thorsday on a different day, most likely here on the Purple Daily podcast feed and YouTube channel. But follow at ThorKU for all the updates. Thor will hopefully catch up with you in Bama sometime next week, man. We're looking forward to it.
Absolutely. And I'm going to have the notebook. Judd, you taught me well. I'm going to have my notebook out there. Yep. And I'm going to empty that notebook the next time I come on with you guys. I'm going to get all the info.
If you see executives talking, you jot that down because I want reckless speculation too.
All right. I'm going to get some intel there. Yeah.
If you see anyone talking, that's it.
Judd, I'm gonna close the beats down as well. Just if there's any scouts there,
that's
maybe they've been drinking a little bit too much. Exactly. Yeah.
I'm so proud of you right now. I'm such a proud sports dad. Thanks, Dorsky.
This is for you, Judd.
Love you.
Thanks, Thor. Appreciate you guys. Hey, Purple Daily, Daily Vikings Entertainment Feedback Friday coming up tomorrow. Appreciate everyone listening. Purple Daily, where we just want to see the Vikings win a Super Bowl before we die.